Okay, hi, this is Murray's assignment 4 video report. Number 1, we had to do an optimized color selected 3D shader. So you can see I did that here. I condensed everything into the MVP matrix. So that's like the model's world, the view, and the projection. So I'm sending that all in at once. You can see that here. I send it in. I just send in all 3 values like that there. Yeah, sorry, I was just, it's basically like this, because I'm only rendering one model. At this time I wasn't thinking about rendering more than one, so I was just sending the MVP, which is the world view and the projection, sending the color, stuff like that. So let me just show that off. See, that works. That's cadet blue. Okay. Number 2 was doing multiple objects with that. So let me just run that quick. Got multiple objects doing the same thing. But this one, I decided to separate sending the model's world and the view and projection, but instead of doing that to the shader, separating them in the shader, I would separate them in the shader class. So I'm sending the view projection just once, and then I send the world each time I want to change it. And you can kind of see the shader class has a storage for the VP matrix. So I send in the VP once, that gets multiplied there, and then the world times the VP gets sent up as the world. So the shader remains the same. We're still taking in the MVP data and multiplying it by the pos here. So that's how I did that. I split them apart. 3 was this pyramid with the texture. So let me just show that. It's pretty straightforward. You just need to see that it's done. 0 is on the left. 0 on the left. You can see that there. Yeah. On the bottom left, you see the 0, 0. So it's aligned correctly. I did the same technique that you did in the having these like V ind and T indices and incrementing them as such, and just figured out the values for that. So there's that. This one was the box. So if I go over here, I can just show that off. It's pretty much similar. See, that's the image that you were looking for, and just like that. There's the bottom, stuff like that. It's pretty similar to the repeated texture, except the texture indices were different. I had to go through, and I basically just did like 2 in 8, because this goes like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I did whatever, how many over 8 to get these values. So that's all aligned correctly. And then in question 5, we do a shader texture class. So that's pretty much what you specified here. You can see I got all of the correct functions that I need. Then I store the texture here, the texture pointer in here, because it gets used in multiple places. So setup is pretty normal. We got the text coords over here. Pretty standard there. In this texture class handles the deletion of the texture, because when you delete the shader, it deletes the texture because that's in here, so that's contained. This only sets the texture. So set texture resource and sampler is kind of a tricky one, because you're not actually handling the sampler. The texture class does that itself. So you just need to pass in a new texture, basically. So then I have sent the camera matrices, send the world, and set to context, and that is basically like that. The textures gets set to context after these constant buffers. So you can see that here. Shader text, I just stored a new shader texture shader. You can see I'm creating a new texture in this function. and then I specify obviously the file path. I set that to I tell it to set the context, and it calls that. Pretty normal. Down here you can see in draw, I send the camera matrices, and then I send the world, and I render that object. I'll just show that. Same old, but now with a new class. Moving on. This is now into the further work section. So for the first one, I'll just show what you were talking about. If I try to render this unit box with the texture 512, I just get this weird red box. And that happens, hang on, let me just prove that I'm doing this. Test 512. That happens because the unit box doesn't actually have its UVs set, because the unit box only doesn't use the right set function, or doesn't use the set function for, uses this set function, right? And so that just sets the U's and V's to 0. So all the UVs are 0, 0 for all of the vertices. So the 0, 0 part of that image is part of this red line, and so we're only just getting that red dot at 0, 0. So that that's why it shows up as red, I think. So there's that. And then the performance stuff, mostly what I found was that it's kind of just like what we were talking about. Like, performance hits were most noticeable to me, at least when, based on what I was sending to the GPU, how I condensed data, and when I was sending it. So like the in-class example, or like the example in this assignment even, was like optimizing by condensing the world, the view and projection matrices into the MVP matrix. So that's like one optimization, and that like most of the stuff revolved around that. I found. So yeah, that's it. That's all.